Welcome to the Multidose Podcast, your guide to authenticity, hosted by Multazim Zia. Brought to you by the Multipath. This podcast is more than just insights, it's your dose of authenticity. Join us as experts, celebrities, influencers, and real people share their authentic knowledge like never before. From every episode, you can expect to learn something new and maybe explore a new perspective on your own life. To support our podcast, consider donating to our Patreon and share the love on social media. Every like, follow, comment, share, and penny counts. Find us on all streaming platforms and connect with us on our social media at The Multipath and at Multazim Zia. Your authenticity is just one dose away.
Robert Tanner is the founder and managing director of KC Partners. He is recognized as a LinkedIn top voice. Rob guides legal professionals in achieving their career aspirations. He hosts the Legally Speaking podcast, powered by legal tech pioneer Clio. Hello, Robert. Thank you for coming onto the podcast. I am super excited to have you on. Everybody will know about you because I've done the introduction anyway. So briefly tell them about yourself again for anybody who's missed it.
Well, firstly, thank you ever so much for having me on the show. It's a real pleasure to be here. I am first off human, because we're in the human-to-human connection world. And secondly, I help lawyers land their dream jobs. And I'm also an investor in legal tech and tech businesses. And yeah, very active on LinkedIn. So it's a real pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you again. So we've had a brief discussion, and the whole concept of this podcast episode is personal branding. Now, like you said, you have a big following on LinkedIn, and that's really impressive because LinkedIn is quite hard to actually build such a big following. So tell everybody why you think personal branding is important, and actually the key elements of personal branding that people should start off with if they're thinking about personal branding.
Yeah. So for me, a personal brand is your greatest asset, but also your biggest insurance policy. So I'll give an example. We have been through very challenging markets and times in recent times. We've been through booms, we've also been through recessions, and we've been through pandemics. If you invest the time to build a personal brand, you may lose your job because of layoffs, which is out of your control, redundancies, but you don't lose your personal brand. And your personal brand, through the contacts and connections, and we're speaking offline through you and your podcast and various mechanisms you've been using, you build a network. And as a result of that, that network can be very valuable to you and can help you throughout your career or entrepreneurial pursuits in many different ways. So similarly, in a boom market, when there's lots of activity and things going on, there's going to be more opportunities coming your way that potentially you wouldn't have got in a lower tier market. So I think it's really important to see a personal brand as your greatest asset, but also your biggest insurance policy. As to me and why I wanted to start a personal brand, I work in a very competitive space. So I have a legal recruitment business, which is a very saturated industry. When I first started my company, there were a number of already established competitors who already were working with my ideal clients that I'd be looking to try and work with. But one thing I noticed a lot of my traditional competitors back then, 7.5, 8 years ago, weren't doing, they weren't investing in where modern marketing is or where modern digital strategies are, which of course you and I know is in various digital media forms. So I got online pretty quickly, and I was leveraging LinkedIn because that's where my ICA, my ideal customer avatar, was hanging out. Right. So I got very active studying the platform, researching the platform, and getting and putting myself out there. Because I knew ultimately that was going to separate me from the pack from other people in the industry. So for me, it all came down to I needed an alternative way to get noticed, build thought leadership, build that level of trust, which you need in terms of being online, to ultimately stand out, to then get new clients and new opportunities off the back of it. So I started in a very saturated industry. I needed to find a way to stand out. Building a personal brand was the best way to do that. And I guess to kind of maybe go on, I needed a vehicle. I needed a vehicle to talk about building a personal brand. And I always believe collaboration is domination. So I launched my podcast in November of 2019. We were literally in a little room through to today. We're now in the top 1% of shows. We've done over 250 episodes. We're in 5,000 cities around the globe. We're sponsored by a legal tech unicorn, Clio, which creates over 100 million annual recurring revenue each year, which is deemed a centaur status. And we've built this huge community. But the first thing I did is start. So for people who are just sort of sat there thinking, wow, and we've had Carol Baskin from Tiger King, we've had all these amazing guests come on the show through to top presidents of law societies and everything in between. The main thing is always take action on information. But the main thing also is to ensure that when you're trying to build a personal brand, that you're going to be valuable for the audience that you want to talk to. So for me, I'm in the legal world. I have a legal recruitment business. My show is all around legal careers. So I needed a vehicle, i.e. a podcast, to talk about what I wanted to talk to my ideal audience. So of course, when I started my show, we'd be talking about how to become a lawyer, how to become a barrister, ways to, get promoted, fast track promotion, ways that we can improve diversity, equity, inclusion in the law, ways that legal technology is transferring the shape of the industry, and all of these various thought-provoking topics. And the way, obviously, you'd produce them, you then start putting interesting content, starting conversations, and you don't just suddenly become another recruiter that set up an organization that's trying to compete. You become a thought leader. And there's people want to engage with a thought leader who's really putting themselves out there with high quality content and also collaborating. So the other sweet part of what I was doing when I launched my podcast was I was reaching out to my prospective clients I wanted to work with, but asking them for not business. I wasn't asking them, can I recruit for you? I was leading with value. And it's really important when people think about relationships, lead with value. I would say to a partner in a law firm, hi, you don't know me, but I run the Legally Speaking podcast. We're in X amount of cities. We do these sorts of forms of content. I've noticed actually your recent marketing strategy within your law firm has been articles and blogs. Actually, I don't think they're getting the level of traction that you deserve. I can do a 25-minute interview with you. I can create video clips, transcripts, show notes. I can produce the best marketing suite of assets you've probably ever seen and put this in all of these different distribution channels. And I just need 25% of your time, and you can do that sat at your PC today. And I would love to talk about your story. That will also help you if you're ever thinking about recruitment. It's your best advert of selling your organization and why people should want to work with you. Would you be interested? Not many people are going to tell you to go away when you lead with that amount of value and you give that much substance. And then, of course, you get accreditations and all these other things without getting too niche on legal. So I then start sharing content with collaborating with people I want to work with, and then other people see. And then suddenly you start getting interest, and you grow and you grow and you grow. So backtrack. First of all, believe in yourself and be bold enough to put yourself out there to start a personal brand. Understand who you want to talk to with that personal brand, and then have a vehicle or a way to do it. For me, I'm an audio guy. I like to communicate. That's my strength. I'm not a fantastic writer. That's not my strength, but communicating is a better strength of mine. So I used a microphone. I always think about WAV strategy, written, audio, or video. What are you strongest in? Maybe use one of those and be consistent with it. And then that's the last point, be consistent. And that's what I've done. And, we've shown up since November 2019, week after week after week after week. And then, of course, along the way, you pick up sponsorship gigs, you pick up all these other investment opportunities, networking opportunities, speaking opportunities that come with it. So it's really powerful stuff. And the thing is, it doesn't happen overnight. Building a personal brand is much like building a career. You and I were talking, you've been spending years on your brand. I've been spending years on mine. I'm still working on it. It's that important to me. Every single day, I want to build my personal brand because I want to build my network, because that ultimately is my biggest asset and my biggest insurance.
I was going to say, you said so much in literally 5-10 minutes of speaking, which I'm like, ooh. And I speak to a lot of people, and no one offers that much value in such a compact amount of time. But there's a few things that I wanted to pick on, and you just got to point it at the end. And it was the fact that it can take such a long time. And we had this discussion, like I said, I've been working my personal brand, let's say properly, for about 2 years, right? Where I've done the kind of molding out of one phase to another phase to another phase. I've just found my feet with it.
Yep.
I know personally, I'm not even at the start. I still know 2 years down the line, I'm not even at the start. I'm not where I need to be at all. I'm probably 10% good from where I want to be. How long did it take you to actually build your brand? Because obviously you didn't jump to the top.
Yeah.
How long did it actually take you, and what did you do to actually persevere through that?
I would say it's only really been the last 12 months where I've really had significant sort of life-changing things like, significant deals with brands, real seats at the table that I wouldn't have got seats at the table at, invitations to networks, events, things like that. So, let's work on 20, it's taken me probably, 4.5 to 5 years of being very, 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 very consistent. And then prior to that, in terms of my recruitment background and experience, probably another sort of 5 to 10 years with that, because obviously I had that kind of known, and that was my skill set and my wheelhouse. But then to go and personally brand myself and be in the legal industry where there's a lot of opinions, very regulated, can be tough to sort of keep those particular personalities on your side, that took further time as well. So this isn't the sort of thing that you can start within. Look, anyone can do a video on TikTok and get the algorithm hacked and probably go viral. I'm not looking for necessarily virality continuously just for clickbait. I'm looking for authority. Okay. Teaching people is the best way to get authority. Okay. They may not be the posts. So some of my posts on LinkedIn may not get the highest form of engagement per se in terms of likes, but the lurkers matter on a B2B professional networking site like LinkedIn. I get so many direct messages of people saying, do you know what, Rob, that post really resonates with me, or that particular podcast episode where you're talking about that actually helped me got this job. Just wanted to say thank you. Or actually, I'm looking for I'm looking for a new job. Can you help me? Bang, inbound direct lead off the back of content. So I've always taken the approach that if you want to make money online and really stand out and be a thought leader, teach people. And the key is edutainment, which is now the current trend. You go on TikTok, you go on Instagram, you go on these things. If you can try and put that into a entertaining, educational manner, then you're going to get more consumption, you're going to get more traction, you're going to build up your brand that way and all of that good stuff. But if that's not you naturally and you want to be natural, just focus on the teaching part, and eventually over time you'll find your tribe and people will start supporting you, and you'll start getting traction.
Yeah, which is something I was actually experiencing myself. I just realized recently, I was like, my viewership has dropped like crazy, and we had this conversation. My viewership on social media has dropped like crazy, engagement's dropped, but it's more like, well, like you said, it's for me, it was more the authenticity now. I stopped caring about views. When I started to focus on views, I felt like I lost a lot of myself and what I actually am. And it's something my friends and my family always joke about. They're like, if you want to become famous and viral, go make a steady video. And I'm like, nope, I can't physically do it myself. But look, it's an important point, isn't it? You don't want to lose the authenticity and the authority you have. And
values are important, aren't they? Values are important, and I have my own values, you have your own values. And, why do you want to be online? Why do you want to be visible? Nowadays, if you're not visible, you're invisible. What do I mean by that is years and years and years ago, word of mouth won the race. I have quite a contrarian view that, of course, word of mouth is still powerful. I don't think it's as powerful as it once was.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the best known now beats the best. If you can be the best known, have a good personal brand and be showing up, and that's why there's companies spending millions and millions and millions fighting for attention on these platforms, because that's where the future is in terms of customer acquisition and where people are setting up shops and all of these things. So you have to be paying attention to that. And I think if you just rely on very traditional old methods in terms of acquiring new business, I think you're in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to come back to another point on personal branding, by the way. It's something that a few people have asked me on social media, and I actually didn't really have no answer because I'm as confused as them on this. So I have a lot of people that are let's say what we call polymaths, right? Similar to me, where I have experience in a lot of different fields, like we were discussing, and they're building personal brands, but they can't link them together. What's your advice or guidance around something like that, where let's say they might be, for example, like myself in real estate, physiotherapy, law? How would you combine all those into one personal brand?
Well, I think have a staple. Well, let's take me as an example. I have lots of different interests. So I have a legal recruitment business. I have a legal podcast. I'm on the board of different tech companies. I do some speaking. I do some mentoring. I do some pro bono work. But my one inner circle, the one word that's linked to me is legal. So I always think about when your personal brand is like, what is that one word? Like, people like Rob, that legal guy, or legal podcast, or Rob. So maybe you're a physiotherapist, right? And maybe you've got your own digital marketing business or on the side, or maybe you've got a podcast in addition to that as well. Where is that one thing, that one kind of word that you want to be known for that's linked to the pain point which you're trying to serve? So, for me, I'm all about my personal brand. People are about Rob Legal, but yeah, I know he's also does this, and this. Everything that I do that's linked to my personal brand typically is linked to the pain point of the audience that I want to serve. So if you're doing multiple things, what is that one or two words? And you can Google on the Google topic of influence. It's where people are putting into Google what they want that pain relief. When someone goes onto Google, typically they're like, how do I remove back pain? Or how do I get a job as a lawyer? How do I get where's my local gardener? Whatever it is, right? And so you want that one or two words in terms of that pain relief to be linked to your personal brand. So really mine is legal careers, but if it's not, is in terms of wider, probably legal, right? Rob, that legal, it does some, and then people that are in my community and know. So that's the one thing I would say in terms of, you've got all these wider industries, what's that one word that you want to be known for, or two words in terms of that topic of influence, and then pull all your things and everything around those particular words, link to your topic of influence, and then you'll build a real powerful brand, because people expect you to have different facets to you. Like I said very openly and honestly at the start of the show, I'm a human first, so I've got other attributes to me outside of my work. I'm also a dad, I've also got interest in sports. I can still show all that, but I still link everything down to my personal brand, is that legal topic of influence.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. And that's something I've been trying to, I think, navigate myself. But I always try to regurgitate, say that to somebody else when I'm trying to build our own brand with all these facets. It's tough. And you mentioned earlier, and this was off air, and I want you to discuss it as well, is you actually initially started your legal recruitment because of, was it your grandfather, was it?
Yeah.
And you wanted to carry on his legacy. Now tell me a bit about around that. Was that a more of a emotional choice? Was that actually an interest-based choice? What was it?
Firstly, thank you for asking that question, because this means a lot to me. And if you can can I tell a very short story if I'm concise?
Tell as long as possible if you want it. It's okay. I want to hear this.
So when I was younger, so my grandfather retired from lawyering. He ran his own law firm and did very well for himself. And unfortunately, he lost his father at 8 years old, and he had to kind of work his way up and self-funded himself and just really independently did very well for himself, and had a lot of respect for him for doing that. But actually, it wasn't all of that where I was most inspired. One Christmas, we would go, every Christmas we'd go to his house, and every year after he had retired, he'd get loads of Christmas cards every year. And I'd be like, Grandpa, you don't have this many friends. And he'd be like, no, Rob, I don't. And I was like, well, who are they all from? He says, they're from my old clients and the families, generations below of my old clients, who are writing to me saying, thank you for everything I did for them, and updating me on their lives and wishing me season's greetings, etc., etc. And that stuck with me. And I thought, wow, what a legacy, what a reputation you did for people, for those families, to really help them, not just as their lawyer, but as someone really, maybe they're at a really difficult moment. When you go to lawyers, typically it's for really bad or for really good, things trying to happen. They're expensive, it's not easy, all of that stuff. So I thought, wow, if I could emulate that legacy, but in a different world, a digital world, an online world, a modern form where I can 10x my reach with all of these social tools and digital tools that we have. But also the sweetener for me is it's searchable for my daughter. I can't go and search what my granddad did in an offline world. And a lot of his contacts, unfortunately, have passed, so I can only go off very dated memories and old conversations to know about his life. Whereas my daughter, everything I do, she's going to be able to one day search it and see Dad's podcast, or see those interviews he did and all the great things that he did for a community or tried to do, and the legacy that he lived. And so then I've got a stake in kind of my legacy can live on through that. So that's really what inspires me to build a kinder, more collaborative global legal community. And that's why also when I'm selective with brands that I affiliate with, it's really important to me. Like, as great as our brand partner Clio is, and how fantastic they are, they have a simple mission to transform the legal experience for all. That simply ties in beautifully to my mission of building a kinder, more collaborative legal community, and we're driving in the same direction. And so we're very value driven and well aligned. So that's really my story, and why it means so much to me, and why I'm in legal and legacy.
I was going to say it's actually so refreshing. First of all, it's so powerful, inspiring, and I do. I follow a similar philosophy. I've said this on multiple podcasts that I've been guest on, and with my actual guests on this podcast, it's something I've always thought about my parents' legacy. Like, my dad has built a great empire. He had to work from the bottom. His life story is practically a movie,
Yeah.
and for me, I always thought there's nothing to show for it. There's nothing. Like, everybody knows him. He's really well known for where I'm from. Everybody will be like, "You're Zia's son." Everybody would know who I am. I don't know who they are, but they know who I am. And
Yeah.
it might be the same. It might have been the same for you, but once he passes away and his generation disappears, that's it.
Yeah.
It's gone. I'm his legacy. I've gone through. I think I did it for a different way, where I'm like, I'm now my dad's legacy. And if I know there's a lot of pressure, but if I kind of feel my dad's legacy, I need to continue that. I need to pass something on to my family and make sure I leave my footprint, not just for myself, for my dad, for my future children, my partner,
Well,
and my family.
Well, you make a really good point, and that's the point that I should have made, because it's my accountability. This legacy
Yes.
is my, entrepreneurship. However people like to slice and dice it, is hard. Running a business, running even a podcast, and being safe. It's, things that look easy aren't always that easy. And for me, when it's days that are getting tough, we can have all the successes in the world, and look, lots of us have lots of successes, but 9 times out of 10, a lot of entrepreneurship is tough days. I remember that I can't give up, or I can't not do this,
Yes.
because I'm continuing a legacy that did fantastically well. And it's very selfish of me to just come in for 5 minutes and not continue that through just because it got a little bit tough. So that's
Yes.
kind of my accountability, and kind of keeping that name above the door is like, right, okay, let's move away this issue because of, it's getting a bit tough. And let's think about, why am I doing this? What's my purpose, my passion?
Yes.
And once you know what your purpose and passion is, you can break down walls no matter how tough they are.
That's a perfect segue as well, because that's exactly the way I would think of it. Find your purpose and keep smashing through every single wall, because that's all it is. It's your fuel, isn't it? Your purpose is essentially your fuel.
Yeah.
And I want to. This will be a nice segue into something else, and it will link back to your story as well. Actually, it sounds like a lot of pressure, and I know this personally because I have the same, like I said, philosophy. I'm trying to build a legacy so I can leave a footprint, not just for my dad and my parents, but for my future children and family. All that pressure. If somebody is sitting out there listening to this podcast thinking, "Damn, I'm going through all of this, but I've not started a personal brand. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it." I know we discussed right at the beginning. That's the actual key steps of doing a personal brand and starting a personal brand. Where should someone start in terms of platforms and the tools that they use? Do you know how you said the vehicles? What should they start with? So, do you know how we discuss podcast, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it is? What do you think, like, writing a book? What do you think it is that they should start with first of all, and how can progress that after that?
Yeah. First thing I would think, if you're trying to get a personal branding and get a bit of traction, where is your audience most hanging out? Okay, so for me, most of my legal audience is hanging out on LinkedIn. Okay, for you, if you've got a different demographic, or a different target audience that you're talking to, it might be TikTok, it might be Instagram, it might be a certain other new platform, or it might be a certain sort of society, whatever it is. So firstly, I would think about, where is the audience that you want to talk to, by and large, hanging out. And then if let's say that you don't want to do any of the things that we've talked about in terms of a podcast. Let's say you don't like writing, you don't want to do articles, but let's say your audience is on LinkedIn. I actually think LinkedIn is a brilliant platform to get started to build a personal brand through not necessarily having to be a creator. So what do I mean by that? Like, LinkedIn is a conversation-based platform. They want people to have conversations. So you want to start building a personal brand in insurance. Let's say you're an insurance person. What I would do is I would follow all the insurance thought leaders on LinkedIn, and I'd follow the various hashtags. And when they start posting, because you don't feel confident to post yet, you're not there, you don't want to, write a comment, write an
Yes.
insightful comment on their content saying, really enjoyed this article about X insurance trend. Actually, I've been noticing this, and this recently. Really appreciate you sharing your content. They'll like it, possibly respond back, but other people are going to start seeing you. And then just watch how your profile views slowly start getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I always reference there's a lady called Lisa Lang in the legal industry that did a great job of this. She's also been on my podcast. She wasn't confident and didn't want to post or anything, but she just started commenting on people like me who've obviously got quite large followings and getting noticed, and then eventually build up your own confidence. Because you start getting good comments back, or actually, yeah, you're talking a lot of sense. And, suddenly
Yes.
then you organically want to start sharing more. But the other thing I would say to people who have those fears is get out of your own way. If you've got knowledge to share, it's selfish not to share it.
Yes.
If you've got knowledge to share, it's selfish not to share it. And that's the mindset you have to be in. Not like, oh, I'm not sure. I guarantee you, I always say everyone has a value. Everyone has something they can teach me. I've learned from you in the short time of being off air and on air from today, right? So we can all share and learn from one another. But get out of your own way and
Yeah.
actually just forget those little demons or things that just will never happen, that are not actually ever going to happen, and just get onto it and actually stop being selfish.
Yeah. Something again you said there, and I was thinking about this as you were speaking through throughout the whole podcast so far, is you must, like everybody else does, you must go through phases of that imposter syndrome where you feel like you don't know what you're doing. And I know I suffer from this honestly tremendously. But self imposter syndrome is something that puts yourself in your own way, right? How do you overcome it? What's your advice for people when they do suffer from that in any field, not just legal, any field?
Yeah. Celebrate the little wins and remember the nice things people have said about you before, right? So I take screenshots of when someone says a nice comment or like I get a nice review and just have them in a little folder somewhere, of like little things, because actually it's very, very easy to dwell on one bad comment or one bad thing that you did, and you forget about all the other things that you've actually
Yes.
done before. And then you get into that. And by the way, I've been doing the recruitment game now for nearly 15 years. I still get imposter syndrome today because I'm like, am I good as I used to be when I was 7 years ago? Am I actually up to speed? Like
Yeah.
so we all have it, but I remember and I go and look at all the testimonials I've had and all the references I had, and it's just to give yourself that confidence back, right? To know that you
Yeah.
can do it. Most of imposter syndrome, again, none of it comes to fruition. I strongly believe people always deserve the right. If you've done something and worked hard, own it. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, own it. It's like when I got this LinkedIn Top Voice, or when I got onto the LinkedIn Creator Accelerator programs. I was the first legal creator in the world to get on one in the UK. When I get invited to speak for Thomson Reuters, and then when we also landed these deals and all these amazing things, I thought, well, actually, the amount of hours I've put in, the amount of work that I've done, not in an arrogant way, but in a confident way, I deserve that seat at the
Yeah.
table. I'm not going to rest on my laurels. Because remember, my late grandfather said, anyone can be successful. It's far harder to stay successful. And I think that is
Yes.
absolutely true, particularly even more so now with AI and the need to move up the food chain, because AI can remove a lot of the remedial work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think sometimes think about what it's taken you to get there, and remember the nice things that people have said along the way. And it's a nice way to kind of remove, not completely remove, because I think a little bit of imposter syndrome is still quite good, and having a little bit of nervous energy is good,
Yeah.
but not taking over so it leads to inaction.
Yeah, I was going to say with imposter syndrome, something I actually heard once from a psychologist, very well-known psychologist, and it was actually a perfect timing. I was really suffering with imposter syndrome to a point where it was affecting everything I did, from business, personal, family, everything.
Yeah.
And he said, look, he went, he said, if you're suffering from imposter syndrome, good. I was like, what? I don't want to hear that. What do you mean, good? And he said, good. You should be suffering syndrome because every time you reach a new level, you should feel like an imposter because you are an imposter because you still need to learn a new level. And then once you've learned it, you go to a new level and he went, that's the only way you know you're actually progressing if you think about it, because you're always facing a new level then. And every time you're hitting a new level, you feel like an imposter. and you have to learn about it, and you hit a new level.
New level, new devil.
Yes, I like that.
That's
But
what's
I'm
been
going to
said
steal
to
that.
me. Yeah, yeah, new level, new devil, and that's the key, right? You get into a new level of okay, wow. And to be honest with you, the comfort zone's great, but nothing ever grows there. So back to this new
Mm,
level, right? You get to a new level,
yeah,
you're uncomfortable because you at
yeah.
that level below, you knew everything, you did everything, but you're not
Mm,
growing. And if you're not growing, you're probably going backwards. So it's really
yes.
important that you push yourself out of your comfort zone.
And you know, with your podcast, for example, like
Yeah.
you said, you grew over time. What was your techniques for anybody that has a podcast, for example, even myself, anybody that has a podcast where they're trying to grow the podcast or they're trying to build a personal brand around a podcast? What's your free advice around that? Or even
Um,
more?
get high quality guests
Mm,
is very, very important. Think about, and then when you bring them on, make sure that you really research them
yes.
to bring out the best of their wisdom. So I think to have a successful podcast, you need to bring out the wisdom of your guests, because typically you're inviting them on for a reason, right? They've got some
Yes.
message to share. So it's your responsibility as the host to bring that wisdom out, because then you're getting super enhanced quality content, right?
Mm,
Which people then want to be associated with and knowing. So I think it's really important to get high quality guests. Another way to grow your show as a podcast is to go on other people's podcasts, but linked to your topic of influence. Remember we talked about for the personal brand?
yes.
I've been on so many podcasts, but they've either had a legal or recruitment kind of swing to them, because that's the
Mm,
topic of influence and what I want to be known for. So it's really important, because what you can do is go on that podcast and you can say at the end of the show, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn here. What you're doing is a simple call to action, and you're bouncing that podcast audience straight into your ecosystem when that episode goes live. So it's a great way for you to grow your show and get new listeners to your show by guesting on other people's podcasts. So big thing about getting good quality, high quality guests. Make sure that you're continuously going on other shows and bouncing them into your audience as part of sort of high quality content. For other people to then discover your show. And
mhm.
then I think the other thing is, don't be afraid to ask your existing audience what they want.
Yeah.
So engage and build a community. Like, I'm a community person, so I'm continuously asking, like, what are some of the topics you want to see? And you can use things like Keywords Planner or answerthepublic.com or Google Trends, and you can just put in, like, if you're doing a podcast about mental health,
Yeah.
you could put in words into answerthepublic.com, like, mental health, and it'll tell you the Google index data of what are the common questions people are asking when it comes to mental health. It might be, how can I overcome anxiety, or how can I reduce stress in the workplace? And suddenly you're getting Google index linked data in terms of what everyone on the internet is searching right now. What do? You then go and get a mental health expert to talk about those topics and write the right hashtags, the right title on your episode, and make it very searchable and traceable. And you suddenly hijack good quality data and audience and start growing your show. So, there's loads of strategic things you can start doing when you start getting into the podcasting. And this is why it depends if you want to be a hobby podcaster or a business strategic podcast. And for me, I'm business strategic podcaster. I want to build thought leadership. I want to build a personal brand,
Yes.
and I want to do deals off the back of my show.
You know what? I was going to say something there, and it was, you sound like you have a wealth of knowledge, and you do have a wealth of knowledge in, especially in the legal field, but in a vast area of expertise in terms of entrepreneurship, podcasting, hosting, public speaking, and the legal field. Obviously, you didn't just acquire that randomly, spontaneously one night. What did you do to actually learn all this, absorb all of this? Because again, yes, you might, like I said this to you before we came on, you learn a lot of this from your actual guests as well. Where
Yeah.
did you learn majority of your things from?
Um, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Self-education, right? So I went on lots of podcast courses, webinars when I first started my show. I went and learned from people better. We talked about New Level, New Devil. So there was someone called Steve Olsher, which people can Google. I learned a lot about him, about podcasting. And then I would just make sure that I'm continuously turning up as a student. I'd put myself in a lot of events and networks and industries. I had to learn legal. I had a whole 10 years of non-legal recruitment experience. I set up a legal recruitment company with no legal recruitment experience. I had recruitment experience, but no sector experience. That's how important building the personal brand was to me. So I had to get out there and network and build people. So my biggest piece of advice is kind of, remember, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Invest in yourself. Invest the time to go and speak to people that are better than you. Get mentors. Have people that can mentor you, guide you. You know, I didn't know a lot about entrepreneurship, so I got into people, you know, got people in partnerships and started learning from them. And the other thing that is really important is I didn't let mistakes hold me back. And by the way, I have made a lot of mistakes. And again, late grandfather said to me, a person who never made a mistake never existed. And it's true. You know, we all make mistakes. And sometimes mistakes can stop people from actually pushing on from their dreams. Or fear. You know, we all know fear kills more dreams than failure ever will. And the reality is, it's super important to not get stuck when you start making mistakes. So moving through mistakes is another piece of advice I would say. So important, because, you know, you could do your first podcast episode and it could be a flop. Who cares? Do your next one better. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the mentality I would encourage people to do. So that's always been my growth mindset mentality.
I was going to say, we're having just this discussion obviously on a smaller scale where we talk about backgrounds. And I was telling you, like, I just figured out we could do this on this. Do you know, and obviously you said this to me, I think we both had a good approach to this. Yours was trying to, okay, how can we adapt your old podcast then? Like, can you add a background? Mine was like, don't worry about it. It was a learning curve. We'll move on. We'll figure out for the next few. I figured this out now. And again, like I said, it's a massive learning curve. And for anybody that's actually going into podcasting, something I want to actually just mention right now is it's such a good way to learn so many new things. Honestly, the amount of things I've learned from guests, I don't when I sit there, I'm flabbergasted to another level, because I'm like, whoa, there's so much you don't know, like so much.
And also, you don't know what you don't know. And the thing is, proximity is power. So you just gave that great example of how we both information shared, and then we both got value back from an information right through that proximity. So being in podcasting, you're getting close to people and you're building community where you're going to get closer to even more people, where, you know, more brains can mastermind together, come find solutions. All of that super, super, super important.
Yes. And before we move on to the last few bits, because I don't want to run over on your time, I want you to, if you can, if you don't, then obviously you don't have the answer for this, then don't. What is that one phrase, word, or sentence that you tell yourself regularly that keeps you motivated, that keeps you in line and on track?
I've probably already said it, because it's one of the best quotes that's really stuck with me, which is, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And what I mean by that is you have to be prepared to take self-accountability. It's very easy. If you're pointing the finger, it's very easy to remember that there's one finger pointing that way, but there's also three pointing back at you. And, you know, it's so easy to say, oh, that guest didn't show up, or that client's done this today, or, you know, oh, I just really don't like what they're doing on that. You know, be accountable for your own actions, okay? If something didn't happen, even if it wasn't your fault, learn to deal with it.
Yes.
So important, because when emotions go up, intelligence goes down. And I found this in my own business as well. When I got very emotional and I was blaming and all these things have gone wrong, I need to do the internal work. So meant to be, up to me. It's been one of the best things that I've ever got into that mindset. Because once you start having that kind of level of opinion and actually standard for yourself, it changes the game.
Do you know what? I'm actually gonna write that on my wall. So on my my working table on my wall, I've got a massive like whiteboard, which is like a wallpaper whiteboard, and I just write loads of different things on it. You know, like my top 5 people that I want to be, you know, like, or my role models, or this is, I've got these tasks to do. I've got these quotes that I'm focusing on, or you know, 3 main questions for my life that always remind me what I'm doing. I'm going to write that. I'm going to write that on mine.
And there's another, not to turn this into a quotation show, but there's another another quote from Bruce Lee that, again, is probably linked to personal brand, which I think will be helpful for your audience, which is, he says, he doesn't fear the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks. He fears the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times. So, you know, we've talked about all of these different things. It's about, what do you really want to focus in on? So if it's your personal brand, what we've talked about, okay, fine. Then it's not going to happen overnight, but keep working at it. Keep working at the personal brand, working at it. Don't try and think, okay, now I'm going to go and do this or go and do that. You know, fear the man who's practiced that one kick 10,000 times. So, you know, I've done over nearly 300 podcast episode hosted. I've probably been on another 100 as a guest. I'm still working on every show when I come on, like, how can I be a better guest? How can I get better at delivery? How can I be a better interviewer? All of these things, super, super, super important. So just really focus down on that, because inch wide, mile deep, super being niche, super being known for a particular thing in a personal brand, the more you're going to rise.
Perfect. And actually, so another question I want to ask you, because you just mentioned something there again. When do you think, or if do you think, when it comes to a personal brand, it's time to, let's say, accept that this personal brand that you're working on is not working, let's focus on a new one, or try to build a new area of expertise? Or what if somebody loses interest in one and think, actually, I don't like this anymore, I want to be known for this instead? What are your thoughts on that?
It's never too late to remodel yourself, a point two version of yourself. Never ever too late. And don't be afraid of telling your existing audience. Like I said to you before, I set up a legal recruitment company and started building a legal procurement band. When I used to recruit in procurement, I used to recruit in energy and supply chain. You know, I had a totally different reputation and known, but actually those people support me. They refer me now, you know, as I've changed my
Oh,
personal brand. And, you know, so I never think, so let's say you've been a doctor for 25 years and now you want to build a personal brand for fitness, you know, doesn't matter. You know, if you're passionate about it, the main thing is you've got to get that passion and the purpose and the reason you're building a personal brand and why it's beneficial to help others, right? Because unless you go down controversial routes for a personal brand, which, you know, is not, I'm talking a professional personal brand,
yeah,
but it's also to you, you can always remodel and reshape. You know,
yeah,
I may change my personal brand in 5 years. I might go to a new level and I
yeah,
become back as an imposter, and I feel like I've achieved what I need to achieve at a certain level. And actually now I want to move from this legal brand to a different area. It may happen. So, you know, never be afraid to do a reversion of yourself, because we're humans, we change. You know, the only constant in life is change. So I don't think
yes,
there's
exactly.
any issue
Yeah,
whatsoever with doing that. I just think
yeah. I
get
was
on
gonna.
with it.
It's always that. As long as you're making positive and good changes, and that doesn't mean you can't make mistakes. It means as long as you're still making positive, good changes, that's what you should be aiming for.
Just understand why you're doing it. Okay.
Yeah,
So if you're changing your personal brand because you're not getting any views, well, a view's important to you. You know, what is the reason you're doing this? Like for me, my why is to build a wider, more kinder, more collaborative legal community. Like it's imprinted in me. Like so everything I do is linked to that legacy. That's my why for the
yeah,
personal brand. If you don't know why you're doing it, then you're going to keep reforming. Like, and that's where you've got to do a bit of the internal work. And once you've done
yeah.
the internal work, you know what your why is, then you're going to go all in on your personal brand.
Amazing. What we're going to do, just to quickly close up as well, let's go through our 5 questions, which I ask every guest. I put them on the spot, don't be nervous. Answer as authentically as possible. And this is obviously my life, my podcast, but also all my brands.
The stage is set, the spotlight is on. This is Doses of Authenticity, where the real stories unfold, every answer reveals a new layer, and the true self shines. Let the questioning begin.
What is your number one life philosophy?
Done is better than perfect. Perfect never gets done. So what I mean by that is stop trying to aim for perfection, aim for progress.
How do you want to be remembered?
As somebody who valued family values in the professional sphere, that managed to continue a legal family legacy for doing good for a legal sector that made transformational, life-changing change for the industry.
One change you would make to society?
Uh, Genuine kindness to matter for all. Let's have a more kinder society would be the number one thing.
The best advice you have been given?
You can do it.
What makes you authentic and unique?
I dared to be different in a very regulated and very opinionated industries of recruitment and legal. And I was the first to do it.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I couldn't even put a price on the value you've offered today.
Thank you.
One of the most, I think, intriguing, captivating, and informative podcasts that I've done in a very long time. And I think it's so valuable to hear it from someone that is not maybe a celebrity or an influencer in the normal sense, like on Instagram and TikTok and things, but more so somebody that has built such a professional a good professional brand, personal brand. So thank you so much again. Just before we close up, where can people find you? Where should they search for you? And anything else you want to share? Any last closing comments?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say thank you for your very kind words. That really means a lot, and I'm grateful for the space. And secondly, the celebrity thing was never my goal, right? And this proves to people that you can build a strong personal brand and be very well known in your industry. Okay,
Mhm.
because I quite like walking out on the streets and not being mobbed. I quite like
Yes.
having a very normal life, but being very not sounding arrogant, very respected and trusted in my sphere. And I think that's my message to people. If you want to do business and you want to engage people and show your human side, I mean, I talk about my miniature dachshund dog, my daughter, all the business knowledge and wisdom. I'm just a human to human in the new professional future of work world. And if
Yeah.
I can do it, you can do it. So yeah, thank you for saying that. If people want to learn more, or people are interested about the world of law and just want to know more, then check out our podcast. It's legallyspeakingpodcast.com. You can get us on Apple, Spotify. We have our own website. You can listen to it there or anywhere you consume podcasts. And if you're interested in wanting me to do any speaking or anything like that, then you can just get in touch with me at my email address, which is rhannah@kcpartners.co.uk.
Perfect. And all those links will still be in the show notes. They will be on the website. They will be everywhere that you can find the podcast as well.